We are back in Las Vegas, Mandalay Bay. The Big Ten Football Media Days presented by Discover as we continue to hear from the 6 teams that are here on day 1, 6 more tomorrow and 6 more on Thursday as we run through the Big Ten and get set for a much-anticipated season. Just heard from Illinois' players. We're pleased to have the head coach of the Fighting Illini, Bret Bielema, with us now. And, Coach, before we look ahead, got to look back on what was a really special year. I mean, you win 10 games, just the 5th time it's ever happened in the history of the program. Is there a moment, that kind of a snapshot that you think about that encapsulates last year?
You know, I got obviously a question that is similar, and everybody always goes to the victories, the success, right? But I think the way we responded after Minnesota, we didn't play well at Oregon on the road, came back and lost a tough game at home against Minnesota, and it just in that moment I told our guys, hey, we had a good football team before we left to go to Oregon, and I know we got a good football team now. Let's go out and close this thing the way we did, and then coming back, that was Michigan, and then to close it out the way we did, and some of those games was really, really big. And it shows the resilience of, not only the guys we have back home, but these 3 guys here were a big part of that.
And so now the challenge is back-to-back winning seasons, something that hasn't happened in Illinois in 14 years. Again, you haven't been part of all that. You've just been there for a brief period here, but there has been a challenge in building consistency. There have been some good years here and there. The issue is, how do you put 2 together? How do you put 3 together? How do you become a top echelon program? What do you believe the keys are to having some continuity and success?
Dave, to learn from our past, right? And I mean this with all due respect. In 22, we had a good football team. Thought we had 23 coming back. Thought we were going to do, but I knew we were lean at some positions that were important. I think in the Big Ten, if your O-line can play well, it's a big deal. But if you have guys that can come in, if you lose a guy to an injury or have a guy miss 3 weeks with an ankle sprain, you got to have that depth in the O-line. So we really addressed that. I think we've continued to build and strengthen our running game, which I think is important. I always say, Coach Belichick always used to harp it. Good teams do 3 things: they run the ball, defend the run, and cover kicks. And I think we're going to be able to do those 3 things very, very well. And that comes from depth, but also some of our really good players from a year ago came back. All 3 of these guys you just visited with, all of them had draft grades a year ago that they could have left, but opted to stay with us, as well as several others. And I think that's going to be our key.
Coach, there's so many positives, right? Most of your team's back. You won 10 games. You have great leadership. You have a veteran quarterback. And I know you have a 1-0 mentality. Yeah. But aside from that, how do you manage that on a day-to-day basis?
To be honest, Coach, I'm going to have to really lean on a really good staff. I saw a million stats coming into this week about things to accentuate or highlight, and one of the ones that jumped out to me, and you know this as a coach, we are the only team in college football that returns my offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, and my starting quarterback for 3 years. I've only had that one other time in my career that I'm aware of, and the results were good. So I think the world that we're living in right now in college football, the amount of responsibility that I have as a head football coach that go beyond just coaching football is really high and needs daily attention. So to lean on my staff is going to be critical. And I've been very fortunate in my career to have a lot of great staff members, but I think the crew I've assembled now in Champaign is above the level. Have about 20 coaches in the building. I think we're at 8 or 9 of those guys played for me, so they know me as well as anybody, and a lot of those other guys have been around me a long time.
So what would those coaches do to not let the team make their own assumptions about the schedule?
Huge. They've heard it out of my mouth, now they got to regurgitate it, right? Like, nothing is guaranteed. I love this, right? Like, yes, we're getting some high expectations, and at first there was a couple people saying it, now it seems like everybody's saying it, and they're like, oh, you got the hex, and like you earn expectations, right? Just like you earn victories. Well, we got to keep in mind, as much as we've earned the expectation, now we got to realize why these expectations are here. It's because we do things on a daily basis. We have a 1-0 mentality. We define ourselves by more adversity than we do by success, and I think those things, if they've bred into them every day and set into them, I think those things manifest. And there's enough guys on this team that the nucleus of what they are still goes back to that 22 to 23 season and the disappointment of that. So I think that's a really big one.
I think you do a great job of situational awareness, football-wise, and in situations. Does that change at all when you have a veteran team, or do you continue to hammer some of those same things home?
Great point. And it actually, everybody wants to ask the million-dollar question, how did Luke get so much better, right? I think Luke understood situational football our first year together, but now he can teach the grad class, right? So, like, when your best players know what that means and how that means, to winning. That's a big part of it. Xavier Scott is a very talented football player. He had a pick 6 against Kansas to change the direction of that game, and that's because they put a big at number 2, and he knew what play was coming, right? So like those situational awareness things that I probably almost preach to like I always say that you can actually do a little bit of a paralysis through analysis, right? Like you can paralyze a kid by teaching them too much. With this veteran crew, we're going to have more than they've ever had, because I think that sometimes those things will be the defining moment in one of those critical moments. And then we have, you know, as good as players as we have coming back, we have 40 new players in the building that weren't with us in the bowl game, right? And that's 40 out of 100. So, you know, 40% of your roster is new. And even though, you know, James Thompson, Leon Lowry, Kurt Neal, those guys all played at Wisconsin, they got to learn how we do things, right? And sometimes those older players, they want to go back to what they've known, not what they need to know, right? And that's a big part of what this fall camp will be about.
Real quick, a lot of portal stuff happens, guys coming in and out of the program. Are you finding that the portal kids that you're getting now adapt to what you want and what this program is about much quicker?
Yes, but I think it's also beginning to evolve, Howard, to where they have learned that why our guys have had success is because of the way we do things. So when they have that defense mechanism of, I used to do it this way, or we used to do it this way, well, that's great, but now my guys say this is how we do it, right? A big one, right? Like we kind of, in this world that we're living in, NIL revenue share, when a kid comes into a program, he knows what he's been told and what he's going to get, and it never deviates, right? But a lot of these guys that were coming from other places, they were coming in there like, hey, we want to renegotiate after spring ball. I said, well, who are you going to negotiate with? Like, I'm the guy you're going to talk to, and like, that's not how deals work, right? Like, I've kind of used this my 3 years in the NFL as like, listen, you don't renegotiate your deal in the middle of the season. Now, there's free agency, right? And that can be an opportunity, but there's a time and a place for that. You know, after spring ball, I don't care how many tackles he had in the spring game. That doesn't apply to game time specifics, right? And that's been a big part of our retention, I believe, as well.
Coach, you spoke about this a little bit earlier today. Tell us what you'd like to see the playoffs look like.
The what?
The playoffs.
Playoffs,
as we
yeah.
go forward.
You know, I thought the 12 change this year was just monumental. To go from 4 to 12 and to see, you know, like, obviously in our conference, you know, you saw we played Oregon, we played Penn State, we didn't play Ohio State, didn't play Indiana, but those 4 teams clearly were really good football teams, right? To see an Indiana team that won, I believe, 3 games a year before and then turn into what they are. We didn't play them last year, but I watched them on crossover. We got them in Game 4 this year. They are a really good football team, right? Like I dove into them deep in February, and you know, I think the formatting of those 12 teams need to be looked at, because you did see, I think, that there were some teams that probably didn't belong, and I think that's hopefully going to get rectified. But I would see the magic number being 16, not just because I'm in the Big Ten with Tony Petitti, but I think 16 sounds good. I made the joke earlier, I don't want to see it go to 30 or something like that, but I think some play-in games would be, now you got 8, 9, 10 teams in November that still have a chance at the playoffs. You talk about keeping fans engaged and people engaged. I think that's a really big deal.
How has Aaron Henry grown?
Probably one of the most enjoyable parts of my coaching experience now is I'm coaching so many former players, right? But now I don't even see, as crazy as this may sound, I don't even see Aaron Henry as a former player, right? Like he said something to me I'll never forget when Ryan took the Purdue job, and I was with Aaron on the road by choice, right? I knew what I was doing. I knew Ryan was probably going to get that job, and I took him on a walk, and I offered him a job. And like, he was overwhelmed because he thought he was going to go with Ryan, you know. I'm like, no, you're going to stay here and be my DC, da-da-da. And like the next day, he goes, Coach, I didn't ever think you would hire me. He goes, because you don't hire friends. And I said, well, I don't think of you as a friend. And right then, I knew, I wish I had not said
Gerry
it.
and Howard tell me that all the time. And it hurts a little, but yeah.
But what I meant was, like, I didn't see him as a friend, right? I saw him as a coach that had earned the right to do it. But on the flip side, he had seen me as a friend, because now we had grown in a way, like, we both are fathers, we both are husbands. So it was kind of this life moment for me, too, where I'm like, let's not put anybody in cookie cut. Like I always tell our players, I don't want guys to look the same, talk the same, walk the same. I don't want the same hair. We have no hair rules. We have no earring rules. We have no dress codes. I just want people to be you, right? But I want you to be the best you. And that's probably been the greatest thing for me. Aaron Henry, he's a little bit like me. He reminds me a lot of me in my early coach career. I was very resistant to the ways I knew. I was a little bit stubborn to suggestions, and now he's got a staff with him that he would tell you all the time, the reason we had success defensively is the coaches that are around him, and I really believe that's true.
Coach, what do you think that you have done to unlock the potential of Illinois? Like, why do you think this has been such a good fit for you?
You know, Dave, I know it sounds simple, but I said it in my opening presser. I think that before I got to Illinois, they had signed 4 players from the state of Illinois in 4 years total. We now have 48 in 4 years, right? And you look, if you just take the offensive line, right, all 5 of our starters are from Illinois, right? Actually, J.C. Davis is from L.A., right? But 4 of our 5 starters are from Illinois. My top 2 running backs, Caden Fagan and Aiden Lawfrey, are both within a half hour of Champaign. And a lot of Big Ten schools wanted them, right? And if they're not from Illinois, they're kind of Illinois-type players, right? Like I always say, hey, if we're going to go to South Florida, I'm great. Let's get a kid that's from South Florida that looks like or talks like he's from Illinois, right? I think a lot of times in my career, in my life, I've seen great organizations that were developed and built from the people within, right? And I just think that has a big factor into it. I think our kids from Illinois, it matters to them a little bit more. But on the flip side, and then I think just overall, our personnel recruiting, we have so many kids that I can tell you right now on defense, I believe we have 7 guys that will start for us that I believe we were their only offer, right? Xavier Scott sat right here. We were his only offer. Matt Bailey, only offer was Illinois. Miles Scott didn't even have an offer. He's our starting free safety. We have several guys that you can just go around and maybe if somebody else didn't want them, we wanted them, and I think that's really been a big difference for us.
Bret, what's the biggest difference between recruiting a portal guy and a high school guy?
You know, the portal guy isn't really attracted to who's got the shiny uniforms or who gives them the best graphic or, like all these like things that really don't matter. When you're young, you don't know, right? And you're shaped by some things that really aren't important at the time. These portal guys, especially if you're going to someone that's got their last year or two, they're wanting – who's going to get me to that next level? Who's going to help me? Yes, winning's important, you're right, and get it. But, like, I'll tell you one thing is not talked about anymore is academics. Right? Like, I mean, like, it's I swear there's going to be a 30 for 30 at some point about what our academic GPA and graduation rates fell off during this time because no one talks about it anymore. Fortunately, we just had our 5th straight semester over a 3.0 GPA out of 100 guys. Like, it's as high as I've ever had it, but I don't think everybody else is doing that.
But the stats says that there were more college football players with degrees last year than ever any earlier time in college football history.
And think
so
about
they're
it.
Graduating.
The last 2 years is the only time in NFL history where the number of underclassmen to declare has decreased. So those guys that are close to graduating, guess what they're not doing? They're not leaving and being undergraduate. They're staying in and getting a degree. So that is the great side of it.
Right. Yep.
I think all of us are just old-fashioned enough to believe there's an educational mission to all of this. And to your point, I it's important, right?
It is.
It's something that you can sell.
Well, my boss was a 2-time academic All-American,
yeah,
so I know it's important to him. You know what I mean? And
I hate those people.
I just hope that we always keep that somehow in the midst of what's going on right now, that we keep that at the forefront.
Yeah.